it might be useful to talk for a bit about development of coach-athlete relationships and share our perspectives with you guys. But if you guys have something that you want to talk about, questions, but also perspectives of your own. I mean, there's a lot of coaching experience in the room that's not up here. What types of behaviors do you enjoy working with the most? Like people that are, I mean, we listed a bunch yesterday of like positive characteristics for powerlifting, like being a hard worker, being persistent, consistent, and stuff like that. But I'm thinking specifically about like things that make the coach-athlete relationship easier to develop.
I think from a coaching standpoint, for me, a lot of times it's enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. So whether or not it's a beginner lifter, somebody who's never powerlifted before, or it's a high-level world's competitor or whatever, just the fact that the person wants to be there and wants to be doing the training and seems passionate about it, mm-hmm. I think it's a big thing for me, and it makes my work on the coaching end feel, I guess, I don't know if more rewarding is the right word. So once we've created this position, we obviously want to remove the bar from the rack as tightly as we can. And I've seen a lot of people, as soon as they lift up the bar, they roll over. Maybe they try to like pop the bar up and the shoulder blades are moving around. What I advise is to be as tight as possible. You spent all this time creating this wonderfully tight and rigid position. If you go to unrack the bar and you lose that, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So your squat is really, really good. The only thing I would change is that lockout where you're like jostling the bar. Looks good. How does it feel? Okay. In terms of the hands, there's a ton of different grips we can take. Will either be thumbs over the bar, thumbs wrapped around the bar. Some people will have bent wrists or straight wrists. And I've also seen people use like a claw grip, which I think is questionably legal in the IPF. To make that shoulder position a little more comfortable is have you tried going thumbs over the bar instead of thumbs under? No? No? Give that a shot and see if that makes it a little more comfortable. Shoulders down, nice tight lats. Good. And there's the photo there is Liz Craven, which is another one of Mike's athletes. She's part of the sort of neutral or anti-extension club. So there's basically two different ways of bracing. There are people who say that you need to be like this, so that this is perfectly flat and they're very kind of crunched over. And then there's other people who will be a little bit more extended. Most lifters I've seen fall into one of those two camps. I don't think that one is inherently better than the other, but I do think in a lot of cases finding the right one for you can make a pretty big difference and have a big impact on your squat. Usually one of the two styles will feel much more natural, as well as allow you to get depth a little bit easier.
Come on.
Good. You'll notice that Mike and I bench with a pretty internally rotated grip. And that for me was something that it was a bit of a turning point with my bench, and it may have been a lot of other things associated with that, but I found by simply, turning my wrist sort of inward and laying the bar across here instead of across this way, it seemed to have a lot of positive impact on my bench. In terms of the width, you'll see a lot of people with a nice, really big arch who are able to get into that position, be a little bit more comfortable benching wider. Oftentimes you'll see flat back bench pressers, maybe bench a little bit narrower. I do think both are worth, again, investigating. A lot of this stuff is just about investigation. But yeah, for me that was a big thing. I bench as wide as I can and arch as much as I can. Obviously, I've got those deadlifter arms, so I've really had to fight for all of my bench gains over the years. Grip width, we kind of just went over that, but one of the things we're looking for, and it's kind of illustrated there, is we're looking for stacked joints in a lot of cases. So depending on how externally or internally rotated our shoulder is, we may want to be wider or narrower. We don't want to be in the bottom position, generally speaking, with a narrow grip and elbows out wide, and we don't want to be in here with our elbows too far in. We kind of want to see these nice sort of clean lines a lot of the time. Generally, a closer grip is going to lead to a lower touch point. Because of that, you're going to be tucking your elbows more in a closer grip, so you're probably going to have a lower touch point. Wider grip, probably going to be touching a little bit higher up. That's because it just goes in. My sumo got really strong really quick. Go, buddy, come on. That was good. Oh, easy. Nice. Yeah, now imagine what you can do in the bench shirt. Leg drive. Okay, so that's a big thing that there are kind of, again, two schools of thought on. Some people will use a sort of, I call it a dump and heave leg drive. So they come down, it's pretty relaxed onto the chest, and you'll see them almost sink. And then there's a leg drive sort of initiation to pop the bar up, and then they try to catch it off the chest. What I usually advocate in the way that I coach for the most part is going to be using a consistent leg drive. So that leg drive begins before you unrack the bar. It maintains throughout the duration of the lift, and any lapse in that often will lead to that chest coming down a little bit and potentially some issues with bar path and stuff. I think this is something that a lot of people tend to mess up. Is unracking the bar. We'll see a lot of people get into this really wonderful retracted depressed position. They go to unrack the bar and we do this. And that really counteracts a lot of the setup. It can wreck the decline position, it wrecks the shoulder position in general. And it just makes it really hard to recover, because once we have that weight bearing down on us, it's really tough to try to get everything set again. So we want to be set before we unrack. Generally when we unrack, one of the cues that I like to use is just to unlock with your triceps. So their elbows are really the only thing that should move to push the bar out of the rack. If that's not possible, we need to probably look at adjusting the rack height so we're not having to protract the shoulders to get the bar out.
this analysis and correction portion constrain your creativity. Kind of the fundamental principle here is find the thing that works. I think this hopefully gives you an idea for what to try. So if you're working with a lifter and they show one of these tendencies, you say, okay, let's try safety bar squats, because that does tend to address this chest fall pattern that you're showing. And then you try it, and it either will work or it won't.
So the way that I'll generally set up a new sumo deadlifter is shins in line with the rings. That's just going to put most people in a pretty decent position in terms of lining things up with stacked joints. And we've talked a few times, Mike was talking this morning about trying to keep the knees over the ankles and toes in the squat. And it's a similar sort of concept that we're looking for oftentimes in the sumo deadlift. And you'll see here, toe angle, one of the things that we'll often look for again is a sort of a nice line through the femur, and same angle for the toes. As far as convention goes, like you're not when we talk about hip height, and that's a pretty widely contested, maybe one of the more difficult things to try to figure out with the sumo deadlift. When we talk about hip height, I don't actually really look at the hips or reference the hips very much. What I do look at is the shin angle and the line of the shoulders to the bar. So the first step of the sumo deadlift is to properly pull the slack out of the bar, and this is a complex thing that I think it takes a lot of practice to get and can be a little bit tricky, and we'll probably dive into this a little bit more in depth when we get to the practical component. If anybody needs more guidance, more help with that, we can kind of do that on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, finish the shoulders. That's it, good. That lockout was 10 times better than the last one.
We do have a bit more time if you guys would. I hope that you take something away from this weekend that helps you get to your next personal best and helps you continue to progress in the sport. And with the balance of our time, if there's anything else that you think might help you progress, or other questions that you might have, then let's kind of open all that stuff up for discussion.